this is the parse.js file inside of Angular. And in here, we're going to find this operators variable. These are the actual ways that it is going to handle it when it finds things in your expression. You can see we have one here for when it finds a null, it returns a JavaScript null. When it finds a true, it returns a true, etc. It implements addition, which is pretty simple to implement, as you can guess. It's A plus B if these things are defined. But the point is, you could probably trick this out if you tried hard enough. This is actually expressions. And that's very key to the power of Angular, because Angular is relying upon the fact that what you are doing when you do something like registered is visible inside of this div for ng-show, this directive, it's actually parsing an expression out here and adding it to the $watch list. $watch is a function that you can access off of any scope in Angular yourself if you wish to have direct access to it. And it's often a very good idea to gain direct access to $watch. $watch is a function that takes 3 parameters.
Nathan, does that mean that you should be mindful of what you're including in the scope?
Yes, it does. Anything you include in the scope is what is your public API for that scope and is available to your view to include in these expressions. You should also be very careful not to put a lot of logic into these expressions. You can, but you're going to end up with a really hard to use, bad program if you do. So $watch is a function that takes an expression, a listener, and an object equality parameter, which is extremely important, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But this defaults, these two you're always going to need to provide for the most part. You can actually give it a null expression for one really strange trick you might want to do with Angular, but outside of the scope of this talk, it's a trick and you probably shouldn't ever do it. The listener is a function that takes a new value and an old value. So you're allowed to execute arbitrary code based upon the new value or the old value inside of this listener. When you register something like inside of this ng-show, when we put an isVisible in there, that's actually registering a $watch. It's calling $watch with your expression and with a listener that it makes, because it knows what to do in this case. It's a pre-built-in listener that it's already defined for you. So then what Angular is going to do is it's going to take your expression and it's going to evaluate it. Your expression can actually be just a pure JavaScript function as well, and it's worth mentioning. If it's a pure JavaScript function, the eval service will just pass it on through as a function. It doesn't care. It knows it's just a function. But if it's a string, it will use the eval in conjunction with these operators and the lexer and parser to go through, evaluate your expression, and return a JavaScript function that is executable and represents your expression. So in this case, it would just turn it into a function to check the scope.isVisible. Very simple one there. If it has more complicated things, it will do that. And lexer and parser and Angular, they're very interesting. They're very simple lexers and parsers, but it's worth looking into. That's in this file, parse.js as well. The lexer is defined here. It lexes off of, it's a simple lexer. It's not as complicated as the full JavaScript lexer. If you want to read through this code, I highly recommend it. It's very interesting. This is especially interesting, is ident for looking for identities. Then it makes it into a bunch of tokens. The parser takes a lexer, filter, and options. It parses this, and its product, once you call this parse function on it, is a function. And you get your function, and you can, well actually it's more than a function, it's a watch, but you end up with a watch out of all of this by calling $watch. And the watch is, it stores the old value if there is one, and it stores the expression and the function to evaluate for the expression, and that's how Angular does its magic of letting you hook up things like this in the DOM. So that's part of this watch list right here. Eval async is extremely similar, only it's for tasks that more come from directives that need to happen in a queue before the watch list, maybe only once, maybe more than once. It depends on how you register it. And it's really not useful very much for writing programs as much as it is for library authors who are writing some very interesting directives themselves. But it allows you to plug in before the watch list and queue up a bunch of tasks that you will run before the render hits. Any questions about that? All right.
It might be a situation where you want to use watch yourself explicitly. Anything about that?
Yeah, a good example is when you want to programmatically fire off something based upon the value of something else. Like, especially, like let's say you've got a situation like our email form, and you've got some rule that whenever email changes, you want to do a check against the server to make sure that that email isn't already in the system, so that maybe you can asynchronously put up a message if you discover that it is before it hit enter. Then you would want to do a scope.$watch on that email value, so every time it changed, you could go and check the server and come back and show them that error message. It's a bit of a contrived example, and there are simpler ways of doing that specific one. But from that you can derive that there are all sorts of cases where you might want to watch stuff. In our app in MedSeq, we make use of $watch on the main scope to watch the list that we're building. We have this big wizard that builds a list, and we watch certain values of it to know when to allow the user to press a button to perform this long-running calculation based upon what they've already entered. So we update a button on there that says something that will affect your calculation has changed. You can update this now if you want. So situations like that, things that are not necessarily DOM manipulation, or that don't necessarily happen in the DOM, that you want to allow the user or give the user some message about. So it's very versatile.